It is tea time. And this is kind of round 2 of the Secrets of the Obscure Roundup Janthir Wilds hype setup. And I got some wonderful guests here as well. We've got Bloom in the mix. It's been a while. He's back, ready to share wisdom with us. We got Sneb also, because, funnily enough, haven't really had a tea time with Sneb kind of going into it, like what we thought about SoTo, what we think about Janthir was kind of the comparison.
Wait, we did that like
going
2
on.
weeks ago.
Well, we didn't do that. That didn't happen. Okay, they didn't do that. We're doing it now. Okay,
it was literally 2 weeks ago.
We're doing it. We're doing it now, guys. We're also doing Sneb Slug in the chat. Get some Sneb slugging in the chat. We got to get that happen. But anyway,
the thought of talking about SoTo has killed Teapot. He's
actually,
already gone.
I picked the background of the stream as the tunnel, actually. So it's kind of the toxic gas, actually, just kind of emerging from the tunnel got me pretty much, right, as we're doing this. I mean, one of the greatest patches in Guild Wars 2 history, of course, is the tunnel.
Oh, dear.
But anyway, let's actually start the show. And I kind of want to bring Bloom into this. I want to get Bloom's take. What were your thoughts on Secrets of the Obscure? Just kind of general overview, and how do you feel it compares, kind of feature-wise, feature set-wise, content-wise, to what we've kind of been seeing in the works, and of course, what's kind of on the Janthir Wilds manifesto, as it were.
Yeah. SoTo. Yeah. Funnily enough, that's like kind of the time that I stopped making Guild Wars 2 videos on my channel for a bit, because I think so you spoke about the tunnel. I think the tunnel patch really broke me, and straight after that, I ended up window shopping and browsing around for other MMOs, and I dove back into Final Fantasy, back into WoW, back into Destiny, into all of those. But then SoTo came out, and I was actually quite skeptical of SoTo, knowing that it was going to be this smaller expansion. And then I did kind of like a full review on the Skill Up channel, and I was quite vocal about the fact that I did not mind SoTo, at least at launch. I thought it was actually pretty all right. And considering it was like half the content of EOD, I still really enjoyed it. I think the story setup was genuinely quite captivating. I really loved the demons and the idea of like demon politics and these different houses. That was so interesting to me. And the fact that the expansion left on the cliffhanger of going into Naos, I was really excited to see where it was going to go, because I thought Naos was going to be super weird and wacky and really political, to be honest. I was quite excited for that. And then there were other things that SoTo brought that I was very happy with. Stuff like the Wizard's Vault, I thought was really excellent. And that's still something, like the fact that is a baseline, addition to the game that's made goal setting way easier than ever before. And like I can log in and know exactly what to do during the week, what my plans are. The rewards in that are fantastic as well. So I like, on basis, I really did like SoTo. It was definitely a little weak in the overall features department, but to me, I've always felt like ArenaNet with expansions have been really pushing the envelope with every expansion, and at some point it's got to slow down. Like, I think Final Fantasy and WoW have got to this comfortable spot where I think people are just happy with more content, and new features are great, but to me it seems more like window dressing at this point. People are excited just for more of the same, which is great. And we've never really reached that point with Guild Wars 2. The expansions have always been super, super features heavy. And at this point, I don't think that is what Guild Wars 2's problem is. I think we've got a lot of cool features. They're really well fleshed out, and the problem now is content. So, in that regard, when we move over to Naos, I wasn't a fan of these patches, really, to be honest. They were still way too short. They seem to really follow on the tunnel's footsteps. Literally like an hour to finish the story, which kind of sucks. And I think you said it. You've said it multiple times, Teapot, that like SoTo is the first time that maybe lore enthusiasts or like story enthusiasts haven't really been well serviced. And I think that's really true, because I would call myself a semi-casual player. I would be keen to jump in with every Living World season and play the new story. The fact that they're so short now, like 1 hour is it's just like done within, like I wake up in the morning, by the time I finish my coffee, I've finished the story, and then there's nothing for like 3 months. That sucks. It's just, yeah. And the map of Naos wasn't as interesting as I thought it would be. Kind of just reminded me of like every other open world zone. It reminded me a lot of like maybe like a Heart of Thorns. Not even that quality. It just felt like a whole lot of nothing, a lot of plateaus with nothing in between. The meta, all three metas are a little bit jank and not fantastic. So, yeah, I was not super happy with Naos, to be honest with you. And it was kind of a shame. But then they announced Janthir Wilds, and that seems to really pick up, really play to ArenaNet's strengths. It's back on being very, very features heavy, and it's back to telling kind of more intimate stories about Tyria, the more like racial stories, which I think ArenaNet has always done really well. I think the races of Tyria are really well fleshed out and have really interesting characteristics. They've got some really interesting politics going on, and I'm glad they're going kind of back to that with this new like Kodan race and being set in the wilds and being set in like mainland Tyria. That's cool. And all the features they've announced look fantastic. I was genuinely quite shocked to see raids coming back. The spear stuff, which I'm sure we'll talk about, they all look fantastic. They look, honestly, I don't know if it's a hot take, but I think they're probably the best. And it's quite early to tell, but I think they're the best designed weapons in Guild Wars 2. They look fantastic. Like, really love the internal mechanics stuff going on. And then we got housing as well, which is looks fantastic. I'm glad that that's coming. I hope they kind of innovate in the ways that they've done in the past with MMO features, So, yeah, I don't know. I'm really keen for Janthir Wilds. Like, that is an expansion. I didn't take any time off during SoTo to play that, but I will be taking time off to play Janthir Wilds. I'm genuinely quite keen. It looks really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of been like I don't know what you'd call that. It's just been like a massive trough with not SoTo again. Basically, TLDR, I really loved SoTo at launch, and then the Naos patches dropped, and I was like, kind of in a slump, playing other games, and then Janthir Wilds has kind of really brought me back. I'm quite hopeful for Janthir Wilds. I hope that they take what they've learned from SoTo and the follow-up patches and apply that to this one. I think there were bound to be growing pains with SoTo, with this new like cadence. And yeah, we'll see how it goes with the Janthir Wilds, I guess.
What do you hope they've learned from Secrets of the Obscure? What do you think when you look at SoTo? Like, where do you think things started to go off the rails? Like, what are some key lessons? Because I imagine did you read the retrospective that was put out recently? I've seen
I've been very closely following everything.
Yeah, what do you make of that actually? Like, what were some things that you felt were missing from that post that were notably missing, or do you think it mostly covered everything? Like, what were your thoughts on the lessons to be learned?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think first of all, in the story department, SoTo went way off the rails. We had so many characters introduced in SoTo, and then as soon as the Naos patches dropped, we just dropped all of them to learn about these new demon companions, and that sucked. That really blew the wind out of my sails. That was so surprising to me because it seemed like they put so much time and effort into building up these new wizard characters, and I was kind of into them, and then just for them to drop them and start over again with such short patches, it didn't work out, and made it really hard to get invested into anyone, get invested into the story. So I hope that's something they've learned with Janthir Wilds, that they kind of like all the characters they set up in Janthir, they follow up on in the following patches, and we kind of stay with them. I think the other thing is probably the instanced content is kind of the big question mark to me still. I read the retrospective. I can't remember off the top of my head if they even mentioned anything about fractals, strikes, raids. But 2 strikes for SoTo felt really weird. I think I really enjoyed the loop of End of Dragons having 4 strikes and you kind of like rotate through them every day. It's a bit of variety. With SoTo, you just kind of had the daily was just one of the 2, and they're 2 quite drastically different strikes. One is like complete brain dead easy mode, and the other one is all right, like an all right challenge. Like I really enjoyed Cirrus. I haven't done the CM, but I think it's a really good strike. But just to have 2 that you're bouncing between each day just feels really weird for like a full year. It's like for a full year, it's just not enough. And I know that raids are coming back, and they've kind of offloaded an easy mode into the open world. I think that will be quite interesting, but I'm still like, we just had this short discussion with Sneb before the stream started. We're still not really sure what ArenaNet's goal is with strikes and with raids and with instance content. Like, do they plan on continuing strikes? Because I actually thought that they were quite short-lived. Like, we got a good batch with EOD, and then we got a couple more with SoTo, and now it seems they're done. They're back to raids, which I'm more than happy with. I'd rather go with raids than strikes, but I don't know if I don't know what their plan is.
You know,
what makes you say that though? Like, when you say I'd rather them do raids than strikes, why?
Yeah. I just like, first of all, on a marketing / labeling perspective,
For sure,
I think the idea of raids coming to Guild Wars 2 is way, like, other outside players can really identify it with that. Like, people know when there's a Destiny 2 raid dropping or a WoW raid just because of the label. But as soon as you hear strike, people have no idea what that means. If you've played Destiny, you're probably thinking like a dungeon. That's what that means in Destiny. So from a marketing labeling perspective, I think it's good that Guild Wars 2 has like raids back. And I guess on my personal view, I just think that there's something about the presentation of raids that is more interesting to me than strikes. Just the one arena bosses, it's cool, and then being like included as part of the story, it's good. But I don't know. I like raids being this like separate little side story thing that has like a proper environment laid out for them, their own sort of mini narrative, that the only way to properly experience that is to actually do that content, to do that raid content. I like each of the bosses also sharing some sort of mechanic with each other. I know that Destiny does this very well, like each boss kind of builds on the other. I don't think Guild Wars 2 has really done that with raids in the past. Every boss has been quite drastically different, but I'd like to see them do that kind of thing for raids.
I think there's something nice about the sequential aspect, right? You have to do them in order, right? You got to clear the raid ring, and that's, funnily enough, this is something I really need to raise this to ArenaNet, because I feel like they might not think about this. I think it's actually pretty important that the raid is sequential even on challenge mode. Like, for example, I think in order to do, if you want to do the third boss on challenge mode, I think you need to have beaten the first 2 first, if that makes any sense. That's something that I was thinking about the other day. It's going to be super weird if you clear the raid, right, and then you can just go back and do it on challenge mode, and then you can do any of them. Like, you can. I really think having that sequential progression element, I think, is so exciting. Like, that to me is like a very, very raid experience that is fun. Like, you're delving, you're plunging, right? You're plunging into the raid. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm really
about progression as well,
go ahead.
Like the idea of like progression and going in there with a group, and you've spent a couple days on one boss, you've nailed it, you're like a third of the way through. So now next time you're with your team, you work on the other third, and then at the end, finally, after like a full week, maybe 2 weeks, you've nailed down the third boss. Whereas we don't really have that sense of progression in Guild Wars 2 at the moment. I think with strikes, we just kind of like, we just have the one. It's like we got Cirrus CM, or we've got the what do you call it? Harvest Temple, that sort of thing. But Dagda, I mean, Dagda exists. She literally exists. So,
I'm curious. Like, do you think it would be a good idea for ArenaNet just to unify the system? Because I think that I feel like one of the reasons they're doing raids is because they want to, again, like you mentioned, that marketability element. I think that's a really important part of it. I think that they're probably testing the waters on this a little bit, especially with like their new implementation of raids with that open world, which I think is a really good idea. But I think that Arena are really thinking more about marketability right now. I think they want to be going, we don't have strike missions, we have raids, because everyone knows what that is. Like, we don't have fractals, we have dungeons, right? I really think it would be, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if ArenaNet unified these structures, actually, like these two systems, and raids and strikes were essentially became just raids, essentially, and then there's different types, right? Like, you have like the single boss style raid, and you have like the more instanced, like, you know, multi-boss raid style experience. Same thing with fractals. I would not be surprised at all if they tried to unify them both under the umbrella of dungeons in some sense, because it just makes a lot more sense, I think, from a marketability perspective as well. Moving slightly on from this, I want to bring Sneb in, because Sneb, I mean, look at Sneb. He's just there. Like, he's just,
I've been quiet. I've been thinking.
He's been thinking about the Vaseline.
And I want to talk about this topic a little bit, and especially from an outside perspective. I want to hear what Bloom's got to say on this. Do you feel like the quality of the content in SoTo was the same? Like, did it differ from previous Guild Wars 2 expansions? Because I think that's a bit of a hot topic, a bit of a concern that I think that players have right now. Like, you know, of course they've learned, you know, they've had some time to refine their development. That was mentioned in the retrospective. And of course, right, it is a new model. They're trying out new things. But like, how do you feel about the quality of the expansion and kind of that going into Janthir Wilds, right? Like, because I think there is a little bit of concern about that.
So what immediately went through my mind is I don't know that the quality has changed that much, but what I think happened with SoTo is they just didn't hit, right? Like, there was no, you know how when an artist puts out an album, musician puts out an album, there's a couple good songs on there. And you know, some of the other songs, they might not be that great, but those few songs, they really carry the album. SoTo just didn't have anything that really carried it. I suppose if you wanted to say something, the open world legendary armor really basically was the expansion, right? All rewards, all maps, all metas, everything led to that one reward, really. And then I think Sarah's CM was a big highlight. But aside from that, they didn't really, there's nothing really striking about it other than that. There was problems and things that just overshadowed a lot of the things that would have been like, oh, you know, that's okay. Like, I actually thought the maps were all right. They weren't my favorite maps, but they were so laggy and the metas weren't very good. And so it's kind of like, well, I don't really want to be there. Like, they're kind of cool to explore and stuff, but I just don't really want to hang out there. And then I'm not really a story player, so I don't want to speak for story players. But I do think that the story started out strong and then just got weird and it was just very short. It was hard to follow because there was so much time in between each patch, and the patches were so bite-sized that those didn't really hit a home run either. So what I think happened was, it's not that the quality was that much worse, it's that there wasn't anything that really was shining and bright and awesome to keep you engaged enough. And so I think it was just kind of at the average for what they normally produce. And that in itself, I guess, was hard for people to overcome.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. Yeah, it definitely felt quite like broadly when you look at it, SoTo, I mean, a lot of people were disappointed, but I just kind of look at it as, it was kind of like mid, and so it really flies under the radar in comparison to all of Guild Wars 2's previous expansions, which all did have that kind of like killer feature, or just they stood out in some way. And yeah, I mean, my biggest disappointment, I guess, was like the maps with SoTo. I did not like the first one. I understand, like the concept of these fractals coming into the real world and being these separate islands is really cool. But then in playing it, it really did, like, I could not get out of my mind that it just felt like an economical move. It didn't feel like they did this for, like, I don't think they delved into the fractal storyline stuff enough to justify it. It really felt like, we've got to be able to create a map with as little, you know, manpower as possible. Let's like use chunks of like other maps from Guild Wars 2. And I couldn't shake that feeling playing it. It might not be that in practice, but just playing that map, I don't know, didn't interest me that much. And then you've only got one more, like on the expansion more. You've only got one more map, and that was Amnitas. And that was like okay, but it definitely did not hit it out of the park compared to previous expansions. And yeah, it wasn't super features heavy either, so there wasn't anything that stood out on that front. For me, the standout feature for SoTo was the Wizard's Vault, and that's just kind of like a baseline thing. It's not really, it did come with the expansion, and I do give it kudos for that, but it's not. I don't really identify SoTo with the Wizard's Vault.
Yeah, a lot of garnish, not a lot of entree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ultimately it's a feature that rolled out to the entirety of the game. And yeah, I suppose this is what I think ArenaNet need to prove. And I think that I think actions speak louder than words. I don't think there's actually anything that could be communicated that would really convince people of this. But like the concern that I certainly have with SoTo is that I feel like they're really going for it, right? Like they're kind of pushed to the limits on like what they can actually develop in the time. It's a short expansion cycle of like once every year. I'm gonna be interested to see if that actually stays the same, or if they want to kind of put the expansions a little bit longer in the oven each time. I could see that being a change, because like my concern is like, especially when I look at kind of the actual encounter design, and also kind of the maintenance of some of this stuff. It is a little bit concerning to me. Like I think I look at Dagda CM and I go, wow. Okay. This is not good. This is actually just not a very, very good encounter. And I think with the way that the development strategy for ArenaNet is right now, I think it's very difficult for them to fix that, right? Like they can't really rework the fight. They can't change it. They can't update it. They can't make it better, really. And I think we kind of see a repeat of this with the Fractal now as well, with Lonely Tower. And I think that, again, I think there's definitely some development strain going on here. Like, let's just say this. You cannot realistically beat Lonely Tower right now without exploiting. Like, that is the current state of affairs. And, that was released, it's like a week and a half ago at this point, right? I think, or something like that. Or nearly 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's not good, to be honest. That is very problematic, I think. And I think a large part of that is because, they're really going for it on this expansion, right? They've got a very big thing going on, a lot of content to make. In fact, they're even kind of amping it up, right? They're doing 3 encounters instead of just 2 in Secrets of the Obscure. I am a little bit concerned that the development load is actually a little bit too much right now on ArenaNet. And, I want to be clear. This is not me criticizing ArenaNet as such here, because, guys, I'm going to tell you a little secret. Game dev is hard, right? Like, code is hard. Animating is hard. Designing stuff is hard. Testing stuff is hard. It's very time consuming. It's very expensive. It's not a criticism, but I think they, I do hope that they do reflect on this and are careful with kind of the scope of a lot of the projects that they're going for, or maybe like they're super confident and, they learned a lot from SoTo. They've got their development strategy all ironed out going into the expansion. But yeah, that's the really big one. Like more than anything else, I feel that SoTo was almost a little bit of a fumble in kind of delivering the usual Guild Wars 2 experience in a lot of places. And I don't want to. Okay, right. I'm going to say this about Ceres. Ceres was a happy accident. Okay, and I'm not saying. Okay, I hate saying this because it can sound really negative and really dismissive, and I really don't want to come across that way. But I actually really want to point out that one of the reasons why Ceres was so good is because it was bugged on launch. That's not a joke. That is 100% true. It was bugged on launch and had like 160 million health and was unbeatable, right? Essentially, right? On the launch of the encounter, right? That then gave them the time to pick a number that made sense, right? Because it was originally supposed to release with the same amount of health as it has on challenge mode now, which definitely makes it significantly easier, obviously, right? Like 24 million less health, that's a lot. And this is the kind of thing that does worry me a little bit, right? Like, as if we kind of go, okay, yeah, well, Ceres kind of worked out, but it was a little bit of a bit of an accident. And I think if you look at Ceres, I think a lot of their development time went on that encounter. It's absolutely the most fleshed out and best designed encounter when I say encounter, I mean including open world, including the Fractal, including every encounter that exists within SoTo. It is by far the best designed. But even that, right, like had problems. It was a bit of a bumpy ride, and I think it's important to note it really could have gone badly, right? Or, well, not badly. It could have gone not as good, if that makes any sense, right? Like, it was a really big deal. It's like, oh shit, this is incredibly epic, right? But it was kind of like that because it was bugged, right? Like, to an extent, right? And that type of thing scares me. A little bit, I think. And I do have this like slight trepidation about like how the content in Janthir Wilds is going to look. You know, I'm not dooming, to be clear. I'd say cautiously optimistic is how I would describe my current mood towards Janthir Wilds. But in my opinion, this is what ArenaNet have got to nail. They've got to deliver us a good open world map in that second and third update. And well, I'm going to be talking about this a lot, actually. Spoiler, I'm doing the marketing. I'm setting up my next, like, couple of weeks on YouTube and next TeaTime even, maybe. Like, we got to talk about fractals. Because, oh boy, I look, okay. I do not think it is a coincidence that ArenaNet released the Fractal CM at the same time as the Janthir Wilds announcement. I think they knew it was scuffed, okay? I think they wanted it to go under the radar, to be honest.
There's no way they would have released it on the same day otherwise. I don't know why you would. If it was going to be like a really big deal, it would have been a total waste. Like, it would have been totally overshadowed by the expansion. And so I think it was probably smart that they did it this way because, frankly, I went in there with people that were way better players than myself, and we kind of struggled, and then we had this realization where we had to exploit it in order to kill it. It was bugged, and it was the only way.
Yeah.
And the moment that I realized that, I didn't really want to do it anymore. And I haven't been back in since, and I don't know if I will. I'm not really a big Fractal player anyway, but they'd have to really fix it. And this is the sad part. I'm not 100% confident they will, right? Or it will take a very long time. I would just appreciate some communication from ArenaNet. If they said, hey, our bad, we released it, there's some pretty big game-breaking bugs, we're going to disable it, and then we're going to fix it, it'll be fixed on this day. I really think that's all that it would take for me. I don't know if that's too difficult, though, to like disable it or whatever, but they do that with other things, so maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I've not even done the new Fractal because of how everyone's been talking about it, and I'm just like, well, if I'm going to do the Fractal and experience that new content, I want to experience it when it's at its best, and so I've kind of been actually waiting for it to be patched or something, or for some Reddit post to go up and be like, Lonely Fractal is good now, before I actually try it, because I'm just, I did the Canaxai Fractal last year on the tunnel update, and I was like super not impressed. So I've just kind of put fractals down for now. I haven't stepped in for a long time, and that's kind of like disappointing, to be honest. It's a bit upsetting because I did quite enjoy fractals for a time. I really enjoyed Sunqua Peak, actually. I thought that was really cool, and it was definitely like a signifier of how they'd go forward with strikes, because that felt like a kind of precursor to the EOD strikes in many ways. And now I'm really kind of confused as to, I think you've mentioned this before, Teapot, I'm really confused where they want to go with fractals, because at the moment they just seem like strikes, and it's like, at that point, why not just make them strikes and put fractals on the back burner until you've actually got like a proper dungeon to present and put into fractals? Because as you say, like, fractals and dungeons should be merged together. It should be all dungeons and all raids. And so for that to happen, you've kind of got to figure out what each of these things do, because at the moment they're kind of blending together, and it's very weird. It's very strange. It's the only MMO that I know this is kind of happening to, that hasn't really quite found its stride when it comes to instance content.
Yeah, and you know, to kind of circle around, I just think that I think kind of having a look at kind of the development scope and development budget for this stuff, I think is going to be really important for ArenaNet. Maybe don't do a Fractal CM every single time, right? Maybe just do a normal mode, and you don't have to have a CM, right? There are plenty of enjoyable Fractals that don't have a challenge mode, I think, and I think a challenge mode is going to definitely add a really high kind of a development weight to any project like this, because of course, you know, if you're going to make something difficult, you have to test it a lot more, because you've got to make sure that it's doable, right? All that kind of stuff. Maybe that didn't happen with Lonely Tower, I don't know. But But yeah, I think this is important. Because I think ArenaNet really need to make sure that they're able to actually deliver on this stuff, but also more importantly, kind of address issues that arise in older content. I feel like this is one of the missing puzzle pieces in ArenaNet's kind of development right now. They are trying to improve on this, I think, because they're looking at, fixing World versus Worlds problems with stuff like world restructuring. They're looking at rewards in World versus World 2, rewards in PvP. Like, they're even adding a new PvP game mode. Like, they want to improve these core features. But I think one area when it comes to improving things that are already in the game is that I'd like to see them improve the existing content in the game as well. And I know that's a little bit tricky because, of course, like, the game marches onward, right? There's no sub fee, so you're not paying for all of Guild Wars 2. You only pay for little pieces of it in one go, which kind of inherently makes this difficult because it's maybe not the most profitable thing. Well, I shouldn't say profitable. Makes the most business sense, right? Like, is a better way of putting it, I think, in this regard. But yeah, like, there are some pretty annoying bugs on a lot of these encounters, and I'm worried that they won't get fixed. They didn't get fixed in EOD either. There's also some potential tuning problems, right? Like, Sarah CM is probably still a little bit too hard. Like, realistically, like, it doesn't really fit that middle ground, right? Like, so players can have that jump up from normal to CM and up to legendary, right? Like, that's the kind of thing you want to kind of deal with there, right? They should probably look at tuning some of the open world as well, because Epoch is it's something in the final map right now. Like, I feel like I really want to see ArenaNet kind of iterate on the content that they release. Like, we see them do that with their systems, and that's great. I think the core systems team, shout out to the core systems team over at ArenaNet. You guys are absolutely killing it. I think everyone agrees that they are slaying, okay, with all the crazy cool quality of life and just kind of basic improvements to the the game system and so on. That is awesome, and I really hope that does continue. But I do want to see the core content team as well kind of spring into action, so we can get some of these fixes on this content. We can maintain the content, improve it, right? Like, make it better, and fix some of the issues. Because if you're reliant on nailing it first try, when you drop a new piece of content and it's fine, it's perfect in every way, that is hard. Right, that is very, very difficult, right? And again, to show how difficult it is, WoW doesn't do this, and they've got a PTR, right? And they have loads of internal teams that like test the raids and test the content as well, in a way that I imagine ArenaNet doesn't currently have. Like, I hope they do that for the raid, for example. But yeah, like, it's clearly a little bit on the YOLO side, I think. So I don't know. Like, I think this type of infrastructure is so important for the game, and I really hope we actually see some progress on that.
Yeah, and those problems really rear their ugly head when we've got so few like pieces of content that come out. Really, just when we've got 2 strikes, and one of them's super buggy, it's just super obvious. There's no way to like sidestep it. WoW releases, like, when they have a raid, there's something like, what is it? I can't remember. I haven't played in a bit. Like 8 bosses.
Yeah, like 8 to 10 is pretty typical, right?
Yeah. If one of them's bugged, that sucks, but you've still got like 9 other bosses. Here, one piece of content comes out and it's lacking. Everyone knows, everyone can see it because everyone's playing it, and there's just like not enough to filter it out, really.
That's kind of what I meant before, right? Where I felt that SoTo was very average because they didn't have a lot of content. So they didn't have a lot of opportunities to hit. And so because none of them did, it made it seem far worse. But let's analyze End of Dragons a little bit. Look, think about the maps in End of Dragons. Which were good maps, which were bad maps. If you think about this, the first map was pretty good. Very vibrant, very beautiful, aesthetically pleasing. Everyone really liked that map. And the meta was all right. The meta was different. Split into 3 groups, go, final boss fight. That was fine. The city map, not very good. People did not like the city map. The meta kind of sucked. The city was just empty. That map failed. Yeah. Next map, kind of average, right? People didn't love that map. They didn't hate it either. It was okay. The meta was all right. It was kind of neat, but pretty average. And then the final map, lots of people really loved the final map. So you had kind of like fail, average, very good, excellent, right? You had the wide array of different, of sort of different levels of appreciation for these maps. But when you go to SoTo and you think about it, you're like, meta event, kind of okay on the first map. Second map, kind of a spectacle, pretty neat. Leg was kind of bad. It was all right. Then you get to Naos and you're like, it's all right as well. And so there's just nothing to write home about. The final boss, like Epark or whatever, is actually pretty all right. It kind of stands there in the middle of the room like it's duct taped to the floor, but otherwise it's okay, right? It's not. It's okay, right?
Is
it's
it?
Average.
No, actually, that's way too generous.
It might be a bit generous. It's okay. I feel like the map is kind of boring. Like the meta event is a massive sponge with a few things that maybe kind of happen, but it's better than some open world bosses and some random maps and core Tyria, right? Like it's okay. It's not great though, and because it's not great, it's not memorable. And given that it's not memorable, it hurts the expansion quite a bit. I don't see, and this doesn't mean they don't exist, but I don't see a lot of people going, oh, join me for my meta train. We're going to do all of the SoTo things. It just doesn't happen quite as much. I think I think if people get their armor and crap, they want to never go back there again because the metas in HOT are just superior and the metas in EOD are superior. So why would you ever want to go back?
Actually, this might be a nitpick, but like a big part of why I do not like doing all 3 SoTo metas is that the enemy types are the same across all 3. You are fighting Cryptus the entire time.
Yeah.
There is like 0 variety. Whereas when you do like an EOD train or a Heart of Thorns train, every meta feels very distinctly different. Totally different enemy types, totally different mechanics. It feels great. But SoTo, like it all blends together. Like convergences, rifts, the meta events, you're all fighting the same Cryptus with the same mechanics, and it just feels awful. And I'm like, really? I actually like gave up on working on the legendary armor because I'm actually so tired of fighting Cryptus. I just like never want to see them again. I'm so excited for Janthir Wilds because I just want to see different enemies to fight. You know, that's a big part of it for me. The variety, to be honest.
I think that's a really good point, actually. It's something I hadn't considered. I think that's a really, really good call. There definitely was like it's almost like play a new world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's actually what it reminded me of. Yeah.
Oh
no.
Well, I think you get a bit of fatigue after fighting the same enemies, but none of that actually mattered. That I just didn't think it was fun, and that's perhaps the most horrible, evil critique ever. I just didn't think the metas were that much fun. And like, I think, man, I think back to End of Dragons. I took time off work and I played 2 days. And I remember getting to, the Dragon's End and we failed at 1%. And I was just mortified. And I was like, holy crap, we got to rally the troops here. Like, this is a battle. Like, we're in this together. This is insane. And we went in and we did it the second time. And then I remember just doing it over and over and over. And I didn't even care about the rewards. I was just doing it over and over and over again because I thought it was so fun and so cool. And nothing mattered to me except for just how novel and interesting that map was. And I didn't feel that a single time in Secrets of the Obscure. Not once. And I don't know if that's a me problem or a game problem or what, but it just is how I feel. When I played Epark, I got to the final boss and I thought, oh, the lead up is so good. Like, it's so interesting, right? There's this tower, this giant, like, evil castle. And then I get to the boss and it's like, hello, I've been hot glued to the ground and you're going to sit here and hit me with your sword for a whole bunch of time. It wasn't the same, it wasn't the same. And I think that really hurts SoTo. There's just nothing super memorable about it. I
think that kind of slightly sideways from this topic, actually, and I think this is a good point of discussion, actually, especially given how Guild Wars 2 is. I think one thing that is really hard to do in Guild Wars is create an expansion that players want to play and not go back to older content. Right, I think that's really hard to do in Guild Wars 2 because of the horizontal progression, right? Like, you play through the new stuff and you go, okay, that was cool. Now I'll go back to doing the other stuff. I think that's one of the things that's very difficult, I think, very challenging for ArenaNet to do is how do you create an expansion that on launch everyone is like, I've got to do this, I've got to come back every single day, I've got to send it, I've got to blast this. Right? That I think is kind of the challenge that they face now. I do think that the expansion Janthir Wilds is a bit better set up to do that, especially with the player housing. Like players are going to obviously be looking to unlock and kind of customize their houses. The housing is obviously going to be in Janthir Wilds, right? You steal a house from a Coden. And of course, like, there'll be loads of stuff you can collect there, right? You're gonna have to like do all the achievements, I'm sure, to unlock various decorations, and of course, buy them on the gem store. Ooh, yeah, all that kind of wonderful stuff. So I think that's gonna help out there a little bit. But I do think this is like a really important rewards conversation, and I'm kind of really curious what Bloom thinks about this as well. I feel like it's really important that there's some at least medium long term kind of grinds almost that you can just do on the launch of the expansion. I felt that was very lacking in SoTo. It was like, what am I doing here? Like, what am I grinding? And
I've got kind of doing rifts to save up for this mysterious legendary armor that's coming in some future patch. But we're kind of like, we'll just keep doing rifts, I guess, for a little while.
Yeah,
you know. That was strange.
I have to interject here. I don't even think it's about the rewards. I really don't think it is. Well, yeah, I think, because I actually made this mistake in a discussion a couple weeks ago. I was thinking, there's just not really that good of rewards in SoTo or whatever. Well, that's just not true. Like they have like a high rarity drop on each meta. They have the kind of like the side thing so that you can get legendary armor with the, what are those even called? The little rift. What are those called? The little rift things. What the essences?
The
essences.
Yep.
They have the essences that you can get from rifting, and like the maps have all of these reward structures around them. They have high rolls. They listen to us for that stuff, but people still aren't going to want to repeat them. Why? It's because they're just not very fun to do. I think it's really
part of it.
I think it's the simplest possible answer. It doesn't matter how rewarding you make something. If it is exceptionally painful to do, people will eventually not want to do it, at least very often. So when you're talking about how do we get people to come back here every single day? Well, you can give them whatever reward you want. Like look at Epark. The final meta I really don't think people are thinking, oh man, I want to go and do this every single day. It has an insane high roll at the end for every infusion in the game. It doesn't matter what reward you put there. Nobody cares. I don't care about the freaking box. It's a stupid box. It doesn't matter. What matters is if I had fun and made some friends along the way. And I frankly don't find that meta to be that. When I go and do that meta, it's a 11-minute, can I get carpal tunnel experience. It's just a massive grind. And you just need to make it more interesting and more fun. If people have fun, they'll do it. And you need to have the right mix too. Like make it rewarding, but make it fun. That you can't just throw rewards at people and then expect everyone to be like, oh yeah, this is the best thing ever. And guess what? This is the most harsh criticism I'm going to give of SoTo. I actually think that is like the epitome of SoTo. They threw a ton of rewards at you with open world legendary armor with these high rolls in the different metas. And they said, go. And people were like, okay. And they redid the maps like hundreds of times and did all this stuff to get the rewards. But I don't, and this is me going out on a bit of a limb, bit of an assumption here. I would venture that a lot of people probably didn't enjoy that as much as maybe some of the collections from the HOT experience or something. I don't think they found them quite as fun. I would have a hard time believing that players really thought grinding rifts for weeks, months was a good experience. I just don't think they thought that. And so they threw all these rewards, but I still don't think the content was lacking. The content wasn't fun.
Well, I think that this is kind of part of the reward structure conversation, right? Because I think you've made some comparisons to some of the collections in HOT. I think you're absolutely right to do that. Why is something like the raid legendary armor. And I think a personal favorite of mine, I'm not sure how other people feel about this, like the Gen 2 legendaries in HOT with the collections attached. Why are those better? It's because the actual reward acquisition method is more fun, right? Like I think that in a way we're talking about the same thing here. I definitely agree that kind of the reward acquisition in SoTo is pretty mediocre. You know, you just kind of, you know, just kind of grind it and then put it in the Mystic Forge and then kind of away you go, right? That's kind of what's going on there. But I think that that's why you do need to have like essentially quests, right, to go and unlock these things. And of course there is an element of a collection, of course, with the obsidian armor, right? There's like a lot of things you have to do, like lots of individual little things that you have to do that. But yeah, I think that you do need to have some kind of thing, but also I think it has to be, to kind of solve the problem that I'm looking for, it almost has to be unique to that expansion, which is why I think player housing is very promising, in a sense, or at least like the particular, the Code and Homestead, because I think you're right. Like, if people aren't having fun, they won't grind for it. 100%. And I think a big part of that is because you don't need to. Like, you know, even if something has like 50 gold per hour, well, you know, you can settle for 30 gold per hour and just have more fun doing it, right? That's the thing. Like, I think that's why it's important to have kind of compelling reasons to play the expansion content, right? Like that, I think that's really important. And I think that SoTo didn't really have that until a lot later after the launch, right? I'm really hoping that that isn't going to be the case this time with Janthir Wilds, and I do hope that the reward structures are better as well. Like one thing that I am definitely intrigued on is the relics, right? Of course, you're going to have to do achievements now to get relics. They're not going to be included in the legendary relic, right? Like this is something that they're changing.
Yeah, I think that's really
to,
good for the game.
Yeah, I think stuff like that is potentially interesting. Like, oh yeah, you're going to have to go and do stuff. I kind of hope they go. I think this is going to be a take that some people might go, oh my god, Teapot, I can't believe you're saying this. And some people are going to go like, oh yeah, this is really cool. But I kind of hope they go hard on this. That there'll actually be a little bit of a journey to getting those relics. You know what I mean? Like, I you know, I do want to do a little bit of a quest. I do want to go and like grind some content to unlock a relic. You know what I mean? Like, you know, get some materials, craft some stuff, do a little quest. I don't know, like do a collection, like going around the maps, right, and exploring stuff and doing events. I kind of like that. To be honest, like that's going to be something that I'm going to do on the expansion launch and go, this is content, this is hype, right? Hell yeah. As opposed to, oh, I'm farming 20 gold per hour. Wow, this is so rewarding. Like, I don't think SoTo lacks gold rewards. I don't think Guild Wars 2 lacks gold rewards. Like, have you seen the gold you can get from AFK farming? It's ridiculous these days. It's crazy. Sneb loves to do that. Look, I have seen, I've seen Sneb leech convergences on 10 accounts. I've seen it. I've seen him do this. He does it. He does it in his own squads, guys. He does it. He goes in there with 10 ults. Convergence CM. Umbriel the Breaker. It is breaking people, by the way. That's funny. But never mind that. Like, the thing is, I really feel that... Again. 100%. I'll wrap it up. I think I really want to see ArenaNet and Guild Wars 2 nail these kind of horizontal progression grinds. Right? I think that is so important. I think it was very lacking in Secrets of the Obscure. I think it should be talked about more. I want to see some proper horizontal progression grinds. Optional, obviously. I'm not saying everyone should have to grind their asses off, right, in order to get all this stuff. But I want to see skin grinds, actual good skins. I want to see Legendary Spear on launch. It's so tragic that it's not on launch. Oh man.
Yeah, totally agree.
But that's the kind of content I really think that that Guild Wars 2 needs. But yeah, let's bring Sneb back.
Okay,
he's about to pop.
Think about this.
He's going to pop.
I'm going to give you an example of a map that is very fun. I would argue that perhaps it's not the most popular map, but it's still referred to a lot, and people still go back and make it a part of their meta trains. Grothmar. Okay. I think that that's one of the most fun maps in the game, and people might disagree. But and the reason I'm going to say most fun is I'm taking a utilitarian view. Like, most people, like the general population, will get something out of it. They have a bunch of mini games, and each of those mini games contributes a key that you then use all 4 keys to open a big high roll chest. And then each meta even has, well, some of the metas actually, or some of those parts actually have a high roll themselves, like a tonic or something. But those events aren't particularly difficult, but they require a little bit of coordination, cohesion on a team, or they're just fun, right? They're just fun. Like the concert is just fun. It's not hard. It's not like crazy difficult or anything like that. It's just pure fun. And so people go back to it because it's just kind of fun and novel and interesting. And then people go to the ooze because it's quite rewarding. People go to the one that has the flame, the torch, because it takes a bit of coordination and has a high roll. And they go to the other one because it's part of the key. I don't know. But it's just an interesting way to do things because every part of the map is important. It's all and it's just pure fun. There's nothing. I guess there's no other way to describe that. It's just fun.
I've got a real problem with like the way ArenaNet present rewards because to be honest, I had actually no idea about that with Grothmar. I haven't done Grothmar in a very long time because I actually had no idea what the actual rewards were for the meta, and I wouldn't know unless I look it up on the wiki. So I haven't done it in ages. But I think you're both right. It is really a combination of fun versus rewards. As I said, like I think I'm a very simple man when it comes to MMOs. If you've got cool looking shit, like if you've got really cool armor sets or cool weapon sets, I will do whatever it takes to get that. If Sarah CM had some like thick weapon set, like really proper awesome looking, I would be grinding that shit every single day to get that.
Well, it has an infusion that's pretty cool.
I have seen that. It doesn't tickle my fancy, to be honest with you.
I think it's cool.
It's close though, because like something like I like Dagda CM's infusion.
Yeah.
So I actually
You don't
tried
like the back tentacles either?
not the back. Yeah, not a fan of the back tentacles. No.
Oh, I thought you might be. Dang.
So yeah. But I do like the infusion from Dagda CM. So I actually got a group together the other week to actually do it. And that's been great. Now I just have to bloody grind out shards to afford to buy it. But I'm very simple when it comes to that. I just need like cool looking armor, cool looking weapons. And SoTo for me actually lacked that kind of stuff. We only got like 2 armor sets at launch, and they were both universal across all classes. And they like look all right, but I don't know, they're not enough for me. I need cool looking stuff. Like when WoW announced showed off the latest tier sets for the new raid, they look incredible. And like I don't even care how good that raid is. I'm going to be doing that every single week to get the full tier set. And I'm going to be playing up. It's going to incentivize me to play other classes just because they look sick. That's it for me. I'm very simple. So I hope in Janthir Wilds that we get some sick transmog. That's literally all I need to make me play the content.
I want to ask you a question about this actually, Bloom, because I agree, but I would add one stipulation to that. And I think it goes in alignment with what Teapot is saying too. You can put cool skins in the game, but there needs to be a cool journey associated with it.
Yeah.
Totally.
If you just put skins in the game, it's just like the gem store. Who cares? Like
Yeah.
if everybody gets the thing because you just walked in the correct direction, then it just doesn't feel very meaningful. It kind of loses a bit of its fun, you know? I like the fact that relics are going to be harder to get. I don't think they're going to be stupid hard to get, but there's going to be a journey, some excitement, some fun associated with that. And similarly, if they add skins and cool transmogs, whatever, into the game, I want there to be some kind of journey associated with it.
Yeah.
I want there to be a story to tell.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that kind of is the Guild Wars 2 experience for me, because it's not about vertical progression. It's not about the destination. It is about the journey. That's always been kind of Guild Wars 2's motto for me. And I totally agree. Like I was so pumped, so excited for the legendary armor, the new open world one. It looked sick when they showed off the pictures. I was like, damn, that's some of the coolest looking armor in the game. And then it released, and I've just like totally dropped off because it requires me to just like grind rifts and cryptus. And that's like, I just can't do it. There's a limit for me. And that's my limit.
He's broken. You know? He broke.
Whereas like End of Dragons came out and the Aurene legendaries, excellent. I was playing End of Dragons content all the time. And because there's a whole suite of weapons, there's something for literally everyone. And then they came out with variants on the following patches, and I went after that stuff. That was really good. And I think you make a good note, Teapot, that not having the legendary spear at launch is a real shame, because that is for everyone. Everyone's getting spear, and you know, everyone's going to want a legendary spear, especially if it looks cool, especially if there's variants. You add variants in future patches, that's, you know, S
The
tier. That's good
ultimate
content.
fantasy would be there's a variant for each profession, right? Because of course
Yes,
everyone's
100%.
getting a spear, right?
Yep.
It would be so cool, like the engineer could kind of get an electric one because they're an electric themed, kind of class with the spear.
Yeah.
The necromancer one can get kind of like this weird soul essence style thing that they've going on there as well. I think that would be really insanely cool actually if they did go in that direction with some variants on the legendary spear. Because bear in mind they did make if you think about it, right? They made a lot of armor skins, right? Like legendary armor is it's 6 pieces of 6 pieces of gear, and of course they did it for all the professions, right? So 3 armor weights across the board. So I'd be pretty surprised if they didn't have something else for the legendary spear a little bit later on, I would say. And of course there is a legendary back piece as well coming out with that too. I just really hope there is a proper journey associated with it, like kind of reminiscent of you know what? I can't believe I can't believe that I would ever say this, but I think Aurora and Vision, actually especially Aurora. Vision wasn't as good. It was actually a little bit too focused on the grind, I think, and less about the kind of the quest element. Aurora was incredibly based. Okay, Aurora was good. That type of collection is what we need in the game. Okay, they should make them longer than that. Actually, they should make it juicier. In fact, that's
what? Actually, the perfect grind for me was the raid armor. That was like perfect to me. Like you step into the raid, you kill one boss, and as soon as you kill that first boss, the collection pops up, and it's pretty straightforward in what you need to get. It requires very few, I think, like actual material grind, and more just like playing the content, playing the raids on a regular basis. So that was really good. But you mentioned those class skins, and that is absolutely something I want to see, because one of my favorite things to do in EOD are those elite spec weapon collections. Like I really love those. That's like perfect mid-core content for someone like me. Gives you a nice ascended weapon. It's got a cool skin that's thematic to the class, and I'm like all about class fantasy. All I play MMOs for is like class fantasy. So they're gonna add something like that in Janthir Wilds. That'd be excellent. They could do it for legendary variants. That'd be sick. But even at launch, if there was just some sort of like weapon collection for each class that gave them, class specific spear skins, that would be sick. Totally down for that.
I completely agree. I really, really do. And I think that this kind of stuff is important, and I'm really interested to see where they kind of take it, because what I really like about kind of the fresh MMO experience is that it kind of is like it's a bit of a group adventure. And I think Sneb, you know what I'm talking about here a little bit with Dragon's End, right? Because why was Dragon's End so exciting? Because I think it felt like a bit of an event in a way, right? It was this like, oh shit, we're all working together on this, right? Like everyone's pushing in the same direction. Yeah. I think that's a really exciting part of MMO launches, is when there is this kind of obstacle, right? And it doesn't have to be a difficult obstacle. Dragon's End obviously had its flaws. For kind of gatekeeping the turtle away from people doing less than 4K DPS. But yeah, it is one of those situations where it turned into something more than it was, right? There is that meta element that comes along with this type of thing, whether it's a challenge of some kind, like, when you have a race to worlds first, which we'll hopefully be having with the raid, all 3 legendary modes is really cool. But also, I think when there's a grind, right, there is this kind of sense of unity, I think, in playing an MMO that's really special, I think, and I think I really want to see ArenaNet capture that again, like both with the open world style content where, there's a boss that maybe is going to take a little bit of learning, and people have to figure it out and figure out how to approach it and coordinate and handle it and all that kind of stuff. But also with some kind of like actual grind, right? Like, oh yeah, everyone's trying to figure out where the relics are, right? It'd be kind of cool if it was a mystery and you had to figure out and actually find them. That'd be kind of cool, a little bit like the Griffin, right? Almost, and you got to do a little bit of investigation, or something like that, right? Like where the players kind of have this. Basically, kind of where there's a social element to it, right? Where interacting with other players and discovering it is a really big part of it. I find that very exciting, and I'm really hoping to see something like that in Janthir Wilds.
And a side note, Relics, right now, are kind of boring. I don't really like them. I wish they were way more interesting. When they were announced, I was really hoping they were going to be something like WoW's like trinkets where they've got all these special crazy effects. That's kind of what I pictured from Relics, and instead they just feel like I'm just replacing the thing I had with runes. Just little DPS increase doesn't really change my playstyle in any meaningful way. There are some that are super interesting. Like I like ones. There were some that like I think it was the Pather one where when you shadow step, you mark a target and you do extra damage. So now you're like, okay, well, how do I include shadow steps into my rotation? That sort of thing. I would like to see more of that, please. I'm not a fan of the just kind of like flat damage increase relics. It seems like every build I come across, I look it up and it's like, yep, thief relic, slap that on, press your buttons, do more damage. I would love to see more interesting effects for sure.
Yeah, I think this will be a really bold move, but I think I'd probably do it if I was ArenaNet. It would also be a decent way to counteract power creep. I would remove every single like flat output relic from the game. Probably.
Yeah.
I think that having relics not as a damage increase, but kind of like a utility pick that you might have that doesn't necessarily increase your DPS, is probably the direction I would have gone. I definitely think that it was like stuff like Thief Relic and Fireworks Relic, probably a mistake, I think. I think stuff like, and on kind of on the support side, Monk Relic, it's just okay, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think it's going to be way more interesting if you have Caracosa Relic, like heal when you do a blast finisher. That's much more interesting, I think. And this one, to be fair, this relic actually is incredibly sick. Like Mercy Relic, like where you res people on more health. That relic is actually very, very good, by the way. But you know, that's maybe for another time. But yeah, I think stuff like that is definitely the way I'd like to see relics go. And even on DPS builds, I think it would be really cool if on a DPS build you would kind of pick a relic for utility. I also think that there could be some systemic improvements to help fix this. I think making it so that you almost have like an extra keybind to activate your relic in some way, I think would be better, rather than having it on an internal cooldown that you can't see. That's kind of a UI issue as well. It's bleeding into a UI problem. But I think you don't really have enough control over them to really kind of be as impactful. Like, you know, they can't make an ability that's like, oh yeah, you know, you now have the ability to reflect, but it activates when you use your heal skill. So now you have to kind of play around this with your heal skill. Like stuff like that just ends up being super awkward and not really working. Really, it ends up just being gimmicky and weird in that type of situation. So I think there's like some room to kind of rework that. But I mean, I don't think they're doing a pretty good job. I mean, like I think that you know, the new Zakharos relic, right? Like that is actually a really exciting, powerful relic, especially for open world content. And it's not a damage relic; it's a lifesteal relic, 4% lifesteal while you have Fury. Really powerful, actually, really, really powerful in a lot of different situations. So I don't know that it's, you know, there's some stuff
getting there.
Yeah, it's getting there. I think there's some potential to make things a little bit more interesting, in my opinion, when it comes to relics and the combat design as well with Guild Wars 2. Again, I think they do need to actually look at the UI. This is almost going to derail into another topic here. But they got to look at the UI, especially, by the way, because they're doing the internal mechanics with weapons.
Yes.
There is no UI support for this in the game right now, and I think that is problematic. Like, is it going to be the biggest deal in the universe? Absolutely not. Is it going to, like, ruin it? No. But I think that if you are adding these kind of internal mechanic style things, and just to quickly contextualize that for people who may not be aware, it's stuff like, you know, you use one ability, it builds up a charge of something, and then you use another skill that kind of releases it, right? Or spends it. Like, it's the builder-spender style gameplay. We're seeing that pop up quite a lot here. And sometimes, you don't need to necessarily know that, but I think there are definitely some examples. We kind of see this in the SoTo weapon with, like, the elementalist bullets. Can be really hard to keep track of sometimes on the pistol, for example. And that is definitely a concern. I would really like to see some improvements to the UI, actually, to kind of better support some of the functionality they're looking for. And it would just be better in general, let's be honest, right? Like, if you can track boons, if you can track trait procs, right? Like, it is very strange to me that I feel like Scourge is actually one of the worst for this. If you play Scourge, you need to be counting to 3 to proc your extra burning on Torment, and counting to 1 to activate Doomfire. And there is actually a way to do this. Like, you kind of look at your Nefarious Favor cooldown, and you have to account for Alacrity, by the way, because the internal cooldowns aren't affected by Alacrity too, so enjoy that. But yeah, there's just stuff like this that is like, yeah, is this good gameplay?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, to be honest. And again, is it a big deal? Nah. If you don't play around it, it's not really going to hold your damage back in a particularly significant way. But it's scuffed, right? Like that's the thing. It's still a little bit cursed when the UI in a way doesn't support some of these things, right, that exist in the game, right? Like if we're going to talk about it in a more relevant sense, you'd be looking at like boons and conditions, right? And like being able to move the target bar down. Like seriously,
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna lie, you've been playing a little bit of WoW. Like it is pain, actually. Why can't I move the target bar down? This sucks.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
like you can do it in vanilla WoW. Why can't I do it in Guild Wars 2? Like, it's, man. It's
like casual players might not care about that stuff, but a mid-core player like myself, I really want to be able to see and track that stuff because it helps me feel more engaged with the combat system, and it helps me try to improve because I can properly track these things. Where like Final Fantasy does this really well, where those like separate little buffs or class-specific mechanics are tracked with a separate little UI, and I want something like that. Like when I'm playing Warrior and I've got Fierce as Fire, I want to be able to track that so that I know whether or not I'm optimizing my damage on the Dragon Slash thing. Because sometimes I think like for a lot of players, they're gonna hit that Dragon Slash and be like, why is it not doing as much damage as it could be? And it's because they're missing the tiny little Fierce as Fire icon that they haven't stacked up. You know?
Yeah, I think there's even a little bit more to all of this. It kind of goes into a bunch of the stuff we've spoken about, actually. You want to have a reason to engage with other people. You want to be able to say, hey, let's debate about which relic is kind of cool, or let's talk about some of these really interesting builds. But it's like, actually, there's only 3 relevant relics, and there you go. The conversation's over, right?
Yeah.
And this is also the case when it comes to just content in the game. Nobody's talking about that last meta. Nobody's talking about strategies to make it better. I don't see any guide videos on how to beat that, right? I'm not seeing it. Maybe some of those exist, right? But the conversation is really low. And I think this is just the case with SoTo in general. And so then when you talk about things like relics, it's hard to have a conversation about something that's just so obvious. It's solved immediately. I think what I crave for the next expansion is to have it so that things aren't solved immediately. I want to go in and have that feeling of wonder, right? Where I go, whoa, like, how do I do this? And then I turn to the people around me and I go, friends, like we're all here together. How can we work together to make this happen? I think Guild Wars 2 suffers from kind of a community problem. And when we were talking about End of Dragons earlier, that feeling that I had that first day when we were doing Dragon's End, it brought me back to like old school MMOs where you were like, man, we got to problem solve all of this together. Like this is a problem to be solved. I felt a part of the world, right? I felt that there was real danger and that it was up to us to figure it out. And I didn't feel like that in SoTo. I don't know why. Maybe it's just content, but I'm hoping I feel that way in Janthir. So I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think I've kind of touched on something even remotely relevant?
No, I think you actually completely nailed it. I think that a lot of what we're talking about very much does come down to that core issue, and I think it was the same with the rewards, right? In a way, we're talking about the same topic. In fact, not even in a way, we are talking about the same thing there. We want interactions with other players to be relevant, to be important, right? Like to feel like your actions mean something, right? Like to have impact. And yeah, I guess we've almost beaten around the bush with SoTo, but yeah, SoTo is trivial. Like it is a trivial experience. It is literally time in, reward out. There's not a lot of thinking. There's not a lot of like solving, right? Or like collaboration with other people. It's a very solo experience. Like, and look, if we're going to kind of get into this, like that's kind of one of the reasons why I certainly didn't like SoTo that much. And also like where I've been at with the game recently and why I'm playing other games. It's because I'm lonely in a lot of ways.
Which is I'm antithetical to the Guild Wars 2 experience. It's always felt like a community-driven game where you get to jump in and play with other players and do all these big, massive meta events that require coordination. And yeah, no, you're totally right. Like SoTo was not that. I would just jump in, grind some rifts or
Yeah.
convergence, jump back out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think Sneb's completely kind of wrapped it up, and I think we should just let him unleash here, for sure. But yeah, I think you completely hit the nail on the head there with kind of the type of experience we're looking for, and that we're looking for in Janthir Wilds and beyond.
Well, I'll unleash a little bit further. There was a Reddit
time.
thread. There was a Reddit thread that talked about a quality of life improvement that you'd really like to see in Janthir Wilds. And I said a completely redone LFG. And the reason is because I want to meet people in the LFG. I want to make new friends. That's why I play MMOs, the massive multiplayer online role-playing game, not the awkwardly go to the dance and stand in the corner and see and be around other people MMO. I want to be a part of something. I want to feel like we're doing something important together, that we're solving problems together. And it doesn't all have to be like that hardcore, like that intense, right? But I just want to feel a part of something. I love doing Triple Trouble because I feel a part of something. I feel like we're working together to accomplish something. I like doing Dragon's End because I feel like we have to be united in some way. But I don't feel that in SoTo, and I find that to be very problematic. And it makes me worry about something like Janthir Wilds because I want to go in there and actually have to talk to other players. And maybe I'm in the minority, and I would accept that. I would accept that maybe I'm in the minority. I like communicating with the people around me. I like going, oh man, where did you get that spear? Like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
And they go, oh, like I just did this achievement. I like trying to solve these things together, and it doesn't feel like there's really much of that lately. I too feel lonely when I play in the open world. I think it should be quite the opposite. I think the open world should make you feel like you're a part of a team, a club, a group, a cult. I don't know. You should be a part of something. You got to be a part of something. You should feel a part of the Guild Wars 2 community when you're doing these sorts of things. And I think that Guild Wars 2, we've touched a lot on, oh, well, they're putting the garnish on all these things, they're doing all these features, but they're not really doing a lot of content. I think I want to add one more piece of the pie here. Put this in, it's not just 50-50. Now we're in thirds. You have to have a reason for community. You have to want to build people and unite people together. And I'm very passionate about this in particular because I'm the leader of the Skane gang, and I try to unite players into groups to tackle instance content. But I'm particularly afraid of Janthir Wilds not taking into account that you must build community, because I lost a ton of community members, and it really affected me. I felt really sad. I lost a lot of friends. They just went and did other things. I was going through my guild list today, 7 months, 7 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months. Guess what happened about 8-9 months ago, right? Yeah. And it's just really sad to me. I really want people to have a reason to be together, to do things together, to have fun together. And they could easily do that by revitalizing things that unite people into teams.
Yeah, I think maybe that's why I'm so excited for raids, because that's dropping on a release after the expansion. So everyone's going to be there. Everyone's going to be in the LFG. And I know I'm going to put up like a tag that's just going to be like, all welcome. Let's just figure it out. And you get 3 encounters to do that instead of like 1. So I'm really excited for that. For sure.
Yeah. I almost want to kind of get into the community aspect of it as well, because yeah, that very much resonates with me as well, because I really like having to. I don't know. This is a difficult toy to explore because you might say, oh, you could still make a guild, and like do the SoTo matters, and that's true. And maybe you guys can help me out, like why it's not the same. It's like
a guild needs to feel important. That's
and it doesn't matter, right? Like if you did that with Secrets of the Obscure, it wouldn't do anything, right? There's no like function there. Like you're not doing anything, like because the event is trivial. So I think what's important with trivial content is that your actions don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very demotivating thing. It's definitely like how I felt with Guild Wars 2, like a little bit recently, is that it doesn't matter what I do, right? Because the outcome is the same. right? And I think this is the downside of having content that is easy in this way, is that it in some sense removes autonomy from the player. Like what the player does becomes irrelevant, right? Like it doesn't change the outcome in any meaningful way. And for me, again, this is definitely my preference. I like games where you have control. It's why I love playing through Divinity Original Sin 2, because you have so much autonomy on like what happens with the game and how you can approach stuff, right? And different things you can do with your character. Like that to me is exciting. And you know, Guild Wars 2 has had exceptional moments like this, you know, mostly in instance content, to be fair, but, you know, like things like Sarah CM, things like HTCM, for example. But in the open world too, like I remember doing Chat Garant for the first time, right? When it was actually, you know, it was still quote unquote bugged or just overtuned or whatever. Yeah, that was really exciting. Like doing Triple Trouble is really exciting. Like, you know, I used to do Triple Trouble and to Quaddle every day. I would join Discord, TeamSpeak actually at the time. And, you know, we do Triple Trouble every day. Like that type of thing where your actions are important. And by the way, I'm not talking about rotation here. I'm not talking about, oh, are you just saying, you know, you like to pump big DPS? No. You don't have to do that stuff with these encounters, right? I won't even use Dragon's End as an example, but Triple Trouble has an insanely low DPS check. It's even back then it was low, right? When I was doing it, it's not about that. It's about the fact that you work as a team to overcome the challenge, and your actions are important, right? Like if you don't do things in a certain way, you don't like actually engage with the mechanics, like with how the encounter is, you fail. You know, you lose. You know, there is something at stake there, right? There is that, you know, the element that, you know, you're probably not going to lose, but you might, right? And it's the same. It is the same with dragons, and it is the same thing with raid encounters. Is that what you do matters, right? And I think that's the holy grail of game design, is when when the player has access to that type of autonomy, you know, where you actually are immersed in the world, right? Like you are in the game. You know, look. Sneb, if we don't stop Su-1, the void will consume all of Tyria. You could get Su-1, Sneb.
It was important. Yeah,
we had to do it.
Yeah.
If we didn't do it, then it's over. It's literally over. If you don't do the tail, Sneb. Get the tail.
We have to do the tail.
Do the tail.
There's something you said that I really want to highlight here. You said, you know, that people had to put an effort. They were part of something, and it wasn't necessarily about performance from a rotational point of view. I 100% agree with that. I don't want to nitpick everyone for their build and their rotation and their DPS. I don't want to do it. And this is coming from
but he does it anyway.
Raids. But no. Well, but kind of, but because I'm forced to, because the new content they make has so much health. We can't do it. Like somebody can't feel a part of it and contribute meaningfully unless they're doing damage. I want it so that somebody can contribute meaningfully without blasting their rotation. I want it so somebody can be like, we're in the worm. We got the harpoon. Hold the harpoon with us now. We're moving over here. Yes. Okay, everyone throw the harpoon. In that moment, you are united as a team, irrespective of your gear, of your rotation, of what build you have. You are able to contribute meaningfully to that event through that series of actions. And here's the thing. I'm going to nitpick Epar because it's really easy. I go in there and you either are blasting damage or you're just a piece of meat there. Like you're going to get obliterated. If you can't do a whole bunch of damage, there are mechanics you can do, but they're all like damage oriented. If you don't do damage, you're screwed. Even at Dragon's End, if you execute the mechanics well, as we've proven multiple times, then you're contributing meaningfully and you will succeed. But the current, like all these normal mode strike missions, these meta events, they are insane DPS requirements for open world events that should be about having fun, making friends, and contributing meaningfully together through mechanics. We've lost our way, Teapot. We've lost our way. Open world is not fun to do anymore because all of these players are like, well, it's gonna die eventually, so I'm not gonna put in a lot of effort, even though I could theoretically do a lot of damage. And then there's all these people that are doing like no damage. And so you're sitting there, you're like, man, like we're not like working together or anything. We're just throwing ourselves at the boss for 20 minutes. That's not fun.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It really is just, it's about design, really. It's just the new encounters just aren't designed very well. They're very focused on that DPS race, as you say, and less on actual just mechanics. Which, yeah, it's really unfortunate. Like, I think a really interesting point of comparison is that I played the Destiny 2 expansion recently, and the DPS requirements for a lot of that content is quite low. You don't need to do crazy damage. But I was doing the latest raid with some friends the other day, and it is just really, really mechanics heavy. Just figuring out the puzzle of each of these fights is so satisfying. It doesn't require everyone to play at the top of their game when it comes to damage, but it's just all about the puzzle, the mental game. And I definitely feel like something's been lost with SoTo. I can't even... I don't think there is a puzzle element to any of the fights in SoTo now that I think about it. That they're all just pure damage dodge AoEs, which is just
there actually is.
Is there?
There is, but it doesn't matter.
Pools?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. Epark has the pools that are not very clearly explained, that are on a UI bar that you can't read, and you are just going to die every 10 seconds anyway to the pools. So there is a bit of a puzzle element. I have never seen the break bar break on NA, Teapot.
Yeah.
I've delved into total insanity. The break bar has never broken. I've done it 20 times.
You got everyone in the break bar pool, and it's just still nothing.
I show them where it is. I explain. Nobody's going to do it. The pool doesn't matter. That's why no one cares. The only thing that matters, because guess what? Breaking the bar is a DPS loss. Everybody has to go and just DPS like crazy. So there is a puzzle. There is a puzzle piece, but nobody wants to do the puzzle because guess what? You could just hot glue all the pieces together. It still makes a picture, apparently.
Yeah, sure. No, you're totally right. Totally right. Yeah.
And
maybe that's why I'm so excited for raids, because I feel like historically raids have always been kind of mechanics puzzle heavy, and strikes have been, I guess, but raids more so. I think they kind of lean more heavily on the puzzle side.
Yeah, I think they definitely do. All that style of content can, for sure. I just really hope that and this is a bit of a fantasy, I will admit this, but I hope that they have the scope to actually change things in more ways than just numbers, right? Like, let me explain why. You cannot fix Dagda without changing the fight mechanically. You can't. You can play with the numbers all you want on CM. That fight will never be good. It can't be done. It's just not well designed, right? Like, if I sat down, and actually, I feel a little bit bad for not thinking about this, bringing this up. If I sat down, I could probably come up with some ideas that would make it more interesting. Stuff like she fires out 2 arrows instead of just the one. So you have to split into 2 groups and dynamically assign to solve that arrow mechanic. Make it so that some of the AoEs move so that you have and overlap with the numbers attack she does. So you kind of have to be moving while also dodging the projectiles from other players, right? Like there's stuff like this that you could do, right? Make it so everyone periodically gets insanity stacks. So you have to deliberately soak some stacks at a time so that not everyone goes insane simultaneously. Like, and look, I'm just like fucking spitballing here, right? Like there are mechanical things that you can do to make that fight good, right?
Pick him up, ArenaNet, Jesus.
But you can't fix it with just playing with the numbers. And I really hope that ArenaNet have some of that kind of budgeted in for their development time when it comes to that new raid. Because it's not going to be perfect, right? I'm not dooming it. I'm not saying, oh, it's going to be so shit they're going to have to rework every single boss. But let's be honest here. There's going to be some issues. Again, I want to say this is not an unreasonable thing that I'm expecting here. This happens in World of Warcraft. They change fights a lot sometimes between beta and the actual release. This is very normal, by the way, to do this. to change fights mechanically sometimes. It's not weird. It's not a high expectation. I really hope they're able to do that and kind of refine things. I do, in some way, I don't like that the CM is coming out 3 months after the launch, because it's not going to be as blind, right, as it otherwise would be if it was all dropping at the same time. And, like, okay, whatever. Grumble. But on the other hand, I really hope they take that 3 months and they iron out the problems, they fix the bugs, and they make sure the encounter design is good going into that CM. I'm really excited to see what they do with the open world as well. I think that is a very, very good idea. I'm loving that. And I'm really hoping that, having that kind of open world raid is going to bring back what we kind of talked about here. I'm really hoping there is a little bit of something to it. I'm not saying it should be super hard, but I am really looking forward to kind of solving the puzzle, right? With a squad of 50 people in the open world. That is cool. I'm 100% down. I'm 100% down for that. That's really exciting. But yeah, I just really hope that they're able to fix any issues that arise, because, I'm looking at the past content. Are they going to fix the Saras bugs? Are they going to fix Epoch? I don't even know if they're going to fix him, right? Well, and Epoch is worse, by the way, because that's in the core game. Bear in mind, right? Look, Saras and Dagda, that's going to be like, that's old news, yeah? Like, that's gone. Nobody cares. Lonely Tower is in the daily fractal rotation. There is no getting away from that, right? Like, it's there.
I see people actually actively avoiding that fractal in the LFG, and I'm like, oh, something has gone so wrong there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big problem, right? It's, you said something earlier, I forget what it was exactly Teapot did. Adjusting the numbers. Something that came to mind was that, like, the gaming experience shouldn't just be a math equation. It shouldn't just be, if we give it this much health and the players will do it in about this much time. It should just be fun. It should just be, hey, I go in, we're all working together. Maybe there's 2 arrows, right? We have to move in certain sigs. If you come at it from the perspective that it's just a math equation, then people are going to treat it like it's a math equation. And guess what? That's what people are doing right now. They're like, I just got to do as much damage as possible. This thing can be over with. I can get the reward and leave. And I shouldn't be thinking like that. I find that to be one of the worst feelings I've had with the game is, how can I just get through this to get the reward at the end? And if you've thought that at all about SoTo, I feel like that's a problem. You should be, when I played EOD, I was so immersed in just like exploring, going through it. I didn't even think about the rewards at all. It was only later that, after I had done all the things over and over and over again, that I was like, you know what? They should probably incentivize coming back to some of this stuff, because otherwise people aren't. And that's not good either. So you need to have the balance. And they did. They made things a little bit more rewarding. And that was good.
Yeah.
Not all about the math.
Agreed.
Yes.
I feel like this has been like philosophical tea time.
It has. I mean,
I feel like it's always philosophical tea time.
I think so. Yeah. But, I actually think these are really important topics to get into, because I think it's easy to kind of get bogged down in specifics sometimes. But I actually think these discussions and these conversations are the important ones. Bloom at the start of TeaTime was talking about fractals and how he doesn't feel there's a design vision. I think he's right. I think that's a huge problem, right? Like, that's the case. It's a huge issue. And yeah, that's not a specific thing. It is very much a kind of a higher level perspective, like a looking top down perspective of like what's going on with the game. But I do think that it is funny, again, Bloom, he just comes in, just brings the content. We're saying, yeah, other MMOs have kind of hit their stride. Like, we see World of Warcraft right now kind of really barreling ahead with what they were doing in Dragonflight. They're now taking that into the War Within, and they're doubling down. They're doubling down on like the design philosophies they had in Dragonflight in the War Within. Guild Wars 2 still hasn't quite found its stride yet. I think that's a really important thing to actually talk about here. Like, they're still trying to figure it out. They've maybe, like, they're settling on this SoTo thing, but again, we haven't really seen them get a clean run in yet. Like, we're still basically just off the tail end of the previous expansion model. Like, we still have to see, what does this expansion look like? What is ArenaNet capable of delivering? I think these are the big and important questions that are going to be answered, hopefully, with Janthir Wilds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't even we didn't speak about the weapons much.
Yeah, we can
to
do
be
that
honest.
now.
So we got 3 new ones. Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I just think they're like incredibly well designed. I think they're a lot of fun. I thought the new weapons that they brought with SoTo were pretty good. Kind of seems like a 50-50 split on like how much people enjoy them. Like half of them pretty good, the other half not so much. But I think they've really taken it to another level with Janthir Wilds. I think the spear. I'm genuinely always excited for these spear reveals, which I don't just isn't something I thought would come out of my mouth. I thought it'd be like okay, but everyone gets me actually as pumped as Elite Specs did. And yeah, I have really high hopes. I'm really excited that Janthir Wilds is going to launch, and we all have like a really meaningful change to our playstyles for that expansion launch.
I'm quite excited. I thought in particular the idea of combos coming back for Thief, I thought that was really neat. And I was quite excited by that. I thought the idea of a spear having being able to go melee or range, I thought that was kind of cool too. Overall, I'm quite impressed with the idea of spear, but I'm cautiously optimistic because it doesn't really matter how cool the spear is if there's nothing to throw the spear at. Right? You need things to do with the spear. Yeah. So I'm really hoping that in addition to this feature set, being able to play the game in a different way, that you're going to add your being ArenaNet. I hope ArenaNet adds things that are meaningful to do. And that will be the raid, that will be the meta events. And if that's the case, then they'll home run knock it out of the park. Because now they've got something really cool that changes the way that you engage with the old game and how you play the new game. And then they've got new stuff for you to do, even with the old kits as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting one. And again, I feel like this is about to get very philosophical again, because I think that it kind of is that. What I think is important is that when you add something to the game, it kind of has a very well-defined purpose. And I think that means as developers, you kind of have to incorporate not just what you want the weapon to be, but also like how the game plays out in accordance with the players, right? Like, I think a really good example of this, of a weapon from SoTo that I think was like, boom, super high impact, very, very nice. Mesmer Rifle. Yeah. Because Mesmer Rifle, alongside some reworks to Chaos Inspiration, a couple of tweaks there, of course, to support that, created, boom, Heal Chrono is now on the menu. Brand new build, right? Let's go. Big energy. Love to see it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of what I want to see happen with a lot of these weapons, is that it's like, oh shit, this is a new thing. That's why I think like, a range DPS warrior. Ooh, new build. That's exciting, right? Like I'm hoping there's a melee cleave AoE Mesmer weapon. It's going to be like a big cleaver, like in World Verse, when you're like going crazy, like smashing everyone with that kind of stuff. Ooh, new build. That's exciting. I think that's kind of what I'm looking for with these weapons, and I hope that they actually do that. I want these weapons to be very impactful. They're replacing elite specializations. It's important that they have a function that the devs want it to fulfill within how the game actually plays out, right? Like we need a lot of Mesmer rifles. I think when a weapon is added to the game and it's like, oh, I guess your build is slightly better now. I'm not sure if that's what you want to see, right? Like you don't want it to, you want it to create new builds rather than augment existing builds, if that makes any sense, right? Like if it just makes your number a bit bigger, I don't think that's nearly as exciting as like, ooh, new play style to play. And I think some of the SoTo weapons kind of fell into that. I feel like Elementalist actually got the, I'm going to make them so happy. The Ellie mains, they're going to be so happy. Like, I think the best example of this to kind of, again, to contextualize what I'm complaining about here would actually be Ellie. Like, Ellie basically got, well, good news for you. Now your numbers are just higher on every single build, right? That's basically what happened for Elementalist with SoTo, pretty much. And I think that's kind of not what you want to happen. I think you very much do want to have a new experience for your players. And look, cheer up, Ellie gang. If you look, I would. You know what? I was almost gonna say that if Ellie doesn't get range spear, I'll slug with Sneb. But actually, seeing as how his bet didn't turn out super well, I don't think I'm going to do that. It's a risky business, guys. It's a really it's a risky
if you
situation.
commit to slugging, you got to do it.
Exactly right. Like you got to get that going. But I mean, like you're probably if Ellie doesn't get range spear, it would be devastatingly entertaining. Like that's how I would say, but it's probably going to happen. But yeah, I definitely think they have learned from their feedback, and I'm expecting these spears to be pretty damn impactful actually, and kind of introduce some new, not only some new gameplay mechanics, but certainly some new kind of play styles with the expansion. And again, here's another thing. Actually, I do hope they're willing to change things even significantly if it doesn't work out so hot, right? I think that was one thing that they couldn't quite do with SoTo as well, with the SoTo weapons. Like, obviously, Engineer Shortbow wasn't exactly a hit, right? And to be fair, it is actually quite strong now. But I'm not sure if it's exactly everyone's favorite weapon from a design perspective, right?
Yeah.
And I hope that they are able, at least maybe even in follow-up patches down the line, in balance patches, to actually kind of get some pretty significant reworks, some of the things, if they don't land, right? Like, if there are problems and there do need to be design changes, I really hope that, again, kind of this is compounding on the issue we talked about, content design. Being able to fix stuff like this and having the agility to address issues like this, even in the live game, I think it's really important.
Yeah.
An NPC in the game is maniacally laughing, but nobody can hear it because I have the audio. Because Gayala this is huge. This is actually huge. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to have to derail this. Guys, the tunnel event has actually now started. This is absolutely huge. Use siege turtles to collect ley line energy and deliver it to the demolition squad. It's Bloom's camera is actually covering up the minimap. I can't show it to you guys, but they are doing the tunnel right now.
Nice. Are you excited for Janthir Wilds, where we get on the Warclaw and we get to pull down like 15 gates to get through the meta?
You know, the Warclaw. You know what? You know what? I'm going to say it. I'm actually just going to annoy people. I actually think that ArenaNet should look at the way that Blizzard handles mounts in combat, because they did a good job of it in Dragonflight, and they're doing a good job of it in the War Within. Having to do a little race minigame in between phases on Tindral is actually really fun. There's a new dungeon in the War Within where where you have to fly to different ships to blow them up to free your ship so it can continue. And you also not only have to fly throughout the dungeon, and that kind of gives you different angles of attack. You can kind of almost like pick how to engage like some of the trash and so on. Also, there's a boss where the boss summons like a Giga Shadow AoE and you have to fly off the boat in order to escape it, and then fly back at the end. That is a pretty interesting thing to do with mounts. I actually think that they need to do more of the you can mount in combat. I think they need to have a scripted event that basically says to the player, mount up, go. Right? So in other words, a boss might phase and move away. Right, let's say it moves to a different area, kind of like the junkyard boss in Echovold, right? It like moves around. Yeah. There should be a scripted trigger that says you can now go on a mount, right? And it says, okay, you can mount up now. We know they can do this because they have the combat mount mastery on the Sky Scale, which by the way has no timer. You don't know when you can do that. That's fun UI issue right there. But they need to actually kind of go further on this. I think I cannot believe this happened. Blizzard got me. I thought there's no fucking way mounts can be good in MMO PvE. Like, I was like, oh my god, second to last boss in Imidrisil's mounts. It's actually over. It's over. This game sucks. There's no way. It's actually the best fight in the entire expansion. Like pretty much hands down. And that's a very broadly shared opinion, by the way. That's a common opinion. That a lot of people feel that way. Yeah, I think they actually kind of need to, if nothing else, double down on this and make it so that, like, maybe the boss is going to put up a shield and you have to break its shield by like pulling it in combat, and then boom, you dismount, like you mount up quickly, pull the shield off, boom, back in combat. Love to see that. Maybe there's actually enemies that have the downstate and you finish them with the Warclaw stomp. Okay, that's actually pretty cool. And again with the gates, I completely agree with the gates. Maybe there's like a siege you've got to do, you mount up in combat, pull the gate down, push in, big blast. That kind of stuff. Actually, it's kind of cool. WoW showed me that
Yeah.
it can be done right, and yeah, I think Guild Wars 2 should do the same. I think they should do this stuff. But
I agree.
I don't want to have this. I don't want to do it. I don't want to see this, Bloom. I don't want to see fucking Fireball. Okay, on the sky scale. What are we doing? What is this?
I think
yeah,
that's just like a case of overuse.
Yeah.
They really did it way too much. Because I think on basis, that sounded really fun, and I was actually quite excited for SoTo to like utilize that fireball stuff in the mounted combat. But they really overused the fireball thing in the same way that Gyala really overused the siege turtle.
The siege
I
turtle.
think initially it was cool. You come up to a gate and you got to slam it open, and I could see in the future how that would expand now that like sky scale there's a mastery to make the fireballs become siege. Like counter siege attacks, and then you've got the Warclaw now, which can pull down gates world versus world. And I can picture a world where there's raid bosses or open world events where you have a bunch of options for tearing down siege stuff, tearing down gates. That sounds really fun to me, but overusing one mechanic, definitely not the way to go. And it's interesting that you mentioned the raid stuff, because that's the direction that I thought raids were going to take with Path of Fire, because they had all these mounts, and I was like, man, they're going to use these mounts in really interesting ways for the raids. And I don't feel like they did that. I really feel like that was like squandered potential. And I'm quite excited to see if they, take advantage of that in Janthir Wilds. Because everyone's going to have the Warclaw. There's no excuses. You're probably going to get it in the story. God, I hope you just get it in the story and it's not like a separate unlock so that they can make it part of the raid. That would be great.
I think it will be part of the mastery system, so I imagine it will kind of be like integrated into the story somehow. Like they were talking about how it's going to help you navigate the terrain, and there was a little bit more information about this. It's going to get like a double jump or something like that. That was in one of the news articles. It's going to be like a little mountain goat, right? You can like climb up the hills and all that kind of stuff. No, I would like to see it, but I think you're completely right about the overuse. I think it has to be done right. I think you have to implement it well in order to to make it fun. Right, to make it, to actually play to the strength of the mount, which is that movement, which is going to be like its special ability to pull down gates, like it does in World vs. World. I think that stuff is what should be highlighted. It should not be like, fireballing, right, and like pressing one button, right? I don't think mounts should not be a replacement of the combat system. They should augment, they should improve the combat system, right? And I think that's the mistake that ArenaNet has done. They use mounts to replace the combat, whereas that's not really how they should have been used, right? Like, I think that's my opinion, obviously, but like
I mean, it just feels like a gimmick in that case, It doesn't feel like it's actually meaningfully expanding the combat or the encounter. Just feels like a gimmick. Hey, you're forced to use mash the one key on your sky scale.
Exactly.
Yeah. Agreed.
What do you think, Sneb?
Yeah, when it comes to things like mounts, I think that mounts can be very. What's the best way to put this? I haven't seen mounts be utilized very well in a long time. Is what it feels like. I think that they positioned it so that it was going to be this like sky scale map, or like sky scale expansion, and then do you remember they did the Griffin video with Willow?
Yeah,
and they didn't have a single Griffin race in those maps. Like, did you
not
find that?
I actually did not even realize that, and that makes me so sad. That is
Isn't that so
unfortunate.
weird?
The map that has like
I mean,
endless skies.
I mean, have the one achievement or whatever,
I will
right?
slightly defend ArenaNet on this. I feel like a lot of the content and some of the adventures that kind of involve you going around the map, they even actually made a reference to like Griffin races in the latest map. Actually, they added a couple of adventures that involve kind of taking a tour of the entire zone, and like, it says something like, oh yeah, some people go like really, really fast on the Griffin. That's part of the description or something like that of the adventure. I think they kind of did this. I think it's a
in
little
Naos though, right?
Yeah, not in Skywatch Archipelago, but there are like some like, I think there are some like adventures that they added those later though, I guess not on launch, but that, like, are going to be.
I guess that was my critique, is that it was just kind of weird when the map, like, part of the marketing was for that, and then it came out and it didn't have that stuff at launch. I don't even know. I just, in my opinion, mounts are one of the best things in Guild Wars 2. I don't know why they don't lean into that. They don't have to go super hard, but I think it should be included in every map. Like, the roller beetle races are freaking cool. There's like whole communities, again, with that community theme. There's whole communities built around roller beetle racing and like optimizing those things. And it just makes it adds flavor to the map and to the community. It makes people wonder, how do I get better at this? Oh, I better talk to someone. I wonder if someone can help me. That's kind of fun. And yeah, I just don't feel like I see that. I haven't seen that lately. I also think that maps should. I think I'm trying to think of a good example of a map that does this well, but like it feels like you just can't do the maps like at all unless you have sky scale in SoTo. But I feel like the maps should be navigable, but if you use the sky scale, you can unlock different secrets or do things a little bit faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I
For sure.
totally agree
I'm
with
trying
you.
to think of a good
I think-
map example of that, though. I'm not sure if I have one
Yeah.
off the top of my head.
Like Dragonfall, I feel like is a nightmare without sky scale. Is that what you mean, or you mean the opposite way, where you
No.
don't
Wait,
have to
wouldn't you
use
say
sky
that
scale to
wouldn't you say that HOT did this pretty well? Not with mounts necessarily, but with kind of masteries, kind of.
Yeah, there's like little
to an extent.
shortcuts, right? There's like shortcuts.
And Path of Fire with Jackal portals a little bit. Like I feel like the mount and like
Yeah.
the maps
Yes,
in Path of Fire,
exactly.
you had some extra shortcuts. But I feel like HT was
Or
really
there's
good at
places
this.
that you could like jump across, but
Yeah.
if you couldn't jump across, you'd have to go like a long way around. Or there's places if you had the Springer, you could like get up, but if you couldn't, then you could find another way to do it. And then there were some places where it was totally impossible. You had to get the mount, and I thought that was good.
Yeah.
But in SoTo, I feel like if I don't have the sky scale, I literally cannot participate because half of the events require you to kill those stupid things in the air. I hate those things. The things where you have to like spin into them and then hit them with the fireball. Oh, it's so weird. But yeah,
I think a big problem why they can't like lean on the mounts as much as they otherwise could is because of the acquisition of these mounts and
Is
all
on
being
expansions,
tied to Path of Fire.
Yeah.
So they can't really do it. They can only do it with the
And also,
like sky scale. They could lean into. With
I've got an
SoTo.
elephant in the room here. I'm sorry. I'm actually going to have to derail this. Do you know why they can't do it with the Roller Beetle and the Griffin? Because the Roller Beetle and the Griffin are actually quite hard to use. Do you know the thing about dragon riding in WoW? It's fucking easy. And anyone can do it. The Griffin and the Roller Beetle are so much fun to use, but they require a little bit of finesse to actually get value out of, right? Like when you go and do like the Griffin trials, like they're not the hardest thing in the universe, but yeah, you actually have to understand like how to gain speed on the Griffin, right? You have to understand how to manage your speed and steer the thing and control the thing and like rise and dive and all this kind of stuff. In order to pass through them. I think I'm not saying they shouldn't do it because of that, but I think that kind of limits how much time they can put into stuff like this, like kind of designing content around the Griffin and around the Roller Beetle, because they do have a bit of technicality to them. And let's be honest, this is not an MMO, not a Guild Wars 2 thing, by the way. Most players are not going to be engaged in that technicality, right? And this is in any MMO, that's just the way it is, or any game even. So that does kind of provide some limitations there, in addition to the fact that these things are locked around expansions. I do think though that a lot of our complaints, by the way, in this regard, are because the sky scale is not actually a super fun mount. By the way, I do want to say this. Like, for example, if they did an entire expansion based around the Raptor, I feel like everyone would go, "This is sick." Because the Raptor is cool and the Raptor is fun. Yeah, it's a basic mount, but it's fun to use, right? And if you think about the expansion mount themes that we've had the Turtle and the Sky Scale, and I would say those are probably some of the lesser fun mounts to use, right? If we're being real here. Like as opposed to like the Path of Fire mounts, I think in particular, like, you know, because of course that includes the Griffin and the Beetle, yeah, with season 4, kind of bringing that in. I guess technically the Sky Scale as well, but those are like the really, really strong and really fun to use mounts, as well at the same time.
Yeah, totally agree. I was going to say, I'm glad that the next expansion is focused on the Warclaw, because I actually quite like the Warclaw. It's close to being a Raptor. But now with the double jump thing, it's got a bit of verticality to it. It's going to remind me of Torrent from Elden Ring. That's why I'm kind of keen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we know much about the Warclaw yet, but what I imagine it being is like you're able to. How do I explain this other than this? You know, in Super Mario 64, how Mario can like wall jump?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I envision a Warclaw doing, is like kind of grabs onto the wall and then leaps off of it, right? Or maybe that's limited or not, I don't know, but I think that could be really, really neat. It's a new way to engage with the game. For some reason, I also feel like if they were going to do anything with the War Claw, I mean, it's the War Claw. I feel like you should be able to like attack while you're on it or something. Now, I don't know what that would mean, but I've always kind of thought that they leaned into the mount combat with the fireball a little bit, testing the waters. I wonder if you're wielding a spear and you're on the War Claw, that you can have certain attacks or something.
You should just
That
be able to
could
throw
be-
a spear from it, like World versus World, pretty much. Like just
I think
Yeah,
that's
there you
almost
go,
certainly
the
going to
spear
happen, right?
thing,
Like,
and- yeah,
that's 100%
100%.
going to be they're going to be the case,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
That could be cool.
Yeah. I think it will be cool to see some like proper integration of this. And I think the Warclaw will actually be a step up. I think it's actually, I can definitely see it being a more fun mount to use than the Skyscale and the Warclaw and the Turtle, yeah, for sure. I think partially because it kind of runs on land. I think that
Yes.
that's kind of fun, right? In a way, like compared to a flying mount. Like
Yeah.
I think that's cool to actually be running along the ground and doing stuff. I think that's gonna be cool. And I think they have some options to make the kind of like the combat element of it be a little bit interesting as well. And I really hope they do that. And I also do really want to see a Roller Beetle expansion. I do want to see a Griffin expansion. And like people were talking about this in the chat, and I think you guys are right. Like how they're limited on stuff because like the masteries are going to hold you back in a way. Then I think they can make some tweaks to like the rental system. Make it so that when you use a rental, you have the masteries or something like that, right? Like you don't have it permanently, right? And maybe like change the system a little bit so like maybe you can only use masteries in the context of a race or something like that, or like some of this content. But yeah, I think there's a couple of tweaks you can make that would kind of get around this, right? I feel like you can design around some of these limitations, right? Like I'm not saying give the masteries away permanently, like you can just like attach them to the rental in some way, to allow players to kind of like have an even playing field in that regard when it comes to this stuff. And you can just make it so the masteries aren't necessary. Like the Griffin is fun to use without the masteries. The Beetle is fun to use without the masteries as well.
I was going to say, you mentioned being on the ground. I have a really scalding hot take,
Oh,
which is that I wish that future expansions that flying was not enabled at the start, and you have to unlock it through a mastery or something, so that you have it's all grounded. You stay on the ground. You discover the maps together in the way that ArenaNet intends for you to do so that they don't have to be designed around the sky scale. Because I find as soon as you're on the sky scale, you just like ignore everything. You just fly straight over. You don't take into account the environment or the pathing or the enemies, anything like that. So I really wish they did the not so extreme as WoW, where you've got to do this like crazy set of achievements to unlock flying, but just as like a mastery, so that at the start you've got to be on the ground. I know that for Janthir Wilds, no matter what, I'm just going to be like on the Warclaw, and I'm not going to touch the sky scale till I finish. But I think that would honestly enhance the experience. I know that that's a hot take though. People don't want their flying mount taken away.
Yeah, I think this is a really difficult thing. Like, it's one of those things. Once the genie's out of the bottle, it's hard to put it back in.
Yeah.
I think without players getting upset, and I understand why people would get upset by that, right? People like using these things, and it's it can be a fun tool, a convenient tool to use sometimes. But yeah, I certainly think that flying mounts, I think, have a really big tendency to kind of destroy the level design of the maps, right? They are very rule breaky. It means, like when the developers make an open world map, they have kind of like a vision of like, okay, so the player's going to enter the map here, and they're going to wander around over here, they're going to go there, they're going to go there. Like, you have this flow, right? Like that you have with these maps, and flying mounts definitely disrupt that. I think. Which is I think is a little bit unfortunate. Like I think it also gets a little bit weird for new players too, because bear in mind, like if I think Dragonfall is a really good example of this. Like if you're like a brand new player on Dragonfall, you haven't got your sky scale yet. That map is kind of annoying, and everyone's going to leave you behind, right? I think that does happen with flying mounts as well, which I think can be detrimental. Like that's not really fixable at this stage, of course, but yeah, you know what I mean, right? Like I do think that I'm not a big flying mount enjoyer. I kind of like the Griffin in this respect, actually, because it wasn't it was more of a glider, right? Like it didn't let you break the level sequencing nearly as much, I feel like, as the sky scale does. The sky scale really lets you just say, well, fuck you, right, to the developers, and just like fly over all of their hard work, basically. Whereas I think that the Griffin doesn't do it as much. I think anyway.
Griffin,
but,
you still have to think about that level design and think about how you can get high enough to be able to dive, to be able to get that much acceleration. Which is, I actually think the War Claw is pretty clever as an expansion feature, because one of my favorite things about the War Claw is that in World versus World, if you don't have it, the War Claw gives that speed buff that keeps everyone up with the War Claw. So
yeah, that's a really good point actually. So it does have that, or like automatic support baked into it actually, that will alleviate that issue of players not necessarily having access to it just yet. Although to be fair, you're probably going to get it pretty early, but yeah.
Totally. Give Skyscale like a passenger seat or something, so you can just pick other people up and fly them with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, they had that with the turtle, right? So they could maybe implement that to other things at the same time. Yeah.
Look, I'm just gonna say it. I say this all the time on TeaTime. I'm gonna say it again. Huge missed opportunity. Missed opportunity for not adding a saddle to the Griffin and the Roller Beetle and making it so that you can have 2 people on them and you can hang out with your friends. Just saying. Also, Dolphin, huge missed opportunity. The Griffin of the Sea.
Yeah.
Why do we have no Dolphin?
Saving it for the next expansion, Sneb.
Yeah, the fully underwater expansion.
Exactly, full on. I actually have full cope that's going to happen. That is. I think that's going to happen at some point. There is going to be a
somebody better check your bloodstream. You might OD. That's a lot of copium.
No, I'm on board. You believed in Wing 8, it came. So,
well, I mean, he didn't believe. He didn't believe in Wing 8.
Yeah.
And now he pays the price.
To your detriment. Yeah.
Sneb is now forced to cut. But by the way, the tunnel meta boss is still going. How long is this taking, huh? What is this? it's like 10 minutes. Well, derail aside, Sneb now pays the price. He will fully cover his body in Vaseline and slug.
Yeah.
When are you doing that, by the way? Are you doing it when the raid releases, or just to like confirm 100% that it's definitely coming? And
I don't know. I was thinking about doing it if they were to announce anything about it.
Yep.
I think that I could get away with doing it then. So I was thinking about doing it in like July or August sometime. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. And I feel like that just about kind of covers it. Like that's my kind of reading the situation. It was a very interesting show. That went in a couple of different directions. I think that very interesting nonetheless, and I think it's a good time to wrap up. So I guess if anyone has final comments, now is the time actually, before we kind of wrap up the show and then go our separate ways, never to talk to each other ever again. That's how it works here on TeaTime, right? They'll never be back.
Yeah. No final thoughts, really. I am actually just genuinely quite excited for Janthir Wilds. I'm actually far more hopeful for that than I am SoTo. I do think it's going to be a marketable improvement. So
the tunnel broke Bloom. The Wizard's Vault put him back together.
Kind of did. Yeah, maybe it'll inspire me so much that I go back to actually making Guild Wars 2 videos. We'll see.
Oh,
there we go.
There you go.
All right, then.
Yeah, I don't really have any final comments either. Yeah. Just, don't use Teapot's referral link.
Whoa. Okay, well, I think that's enough. Okay, we can shut the stream down now, okay? Guys, GW2 in the chat. GW2 in the chat. Do not use Sneb's referral link, guys. Do not go anywhere near that stuff. It's not good. It's corrupted. It will actually steal your IP address. It will steal your credit card. It's not good. It's a virus. Okay, if you guys use Sneb's referral link, it will give you sneb.dll, and then you turn into a slug as well. You don't want that, trust me. But anyway,
a little slug just crawls across your screen. You can never get rid of it.
Let's wrap this up. So thanks for watching, everyone, gamers. We're about to tell you about ourselves a little bit, actually. I'm aiming to finish this before the tunnel meta ends, because the tunnel is eternal. But anyway, of course, massive shout out to all of you for watching on Twitch and YouTube, but of course to my wonderful guests here. We have got Bloom, we've got Dark Sneb. I renamed him again. Dark Sneb is back. Love to see that. But return to the show. It's been a little while. It's Bloom. Delayed the show by 3 hours, so it's his fault we're late. Okay, that is what's going on there. What's going on, my friend? How can we stalk you on the internet?
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you, Teapot, and the rest of the audience for being so accommodating. And I know it's late as hell for you guys now. It's like 11, 12 p.m. This show went way longer than I thought it would. But yeah, I am Bloom on YouTube. You can find me, the best way to look it up is just Bloom Guild Wars 2. I make guides and stuff, or I did before the tunnel meta. It's been a hot minute since I've made Guild Wars 2 stuff, but I think the last Guild Wars 2 thing I made was like, I did a full review on the channel that I do game reviews for, which is Skill Up. I did a full Guild Wars 2 review there last year when SoTo came out, and I intend to do the same with Janthir Wilds. So yeah, you can catch me on either of those two channels, Skill Up or Bloom. So that's about it.
All right. In the bottom left corner, marathon enthusiast, Warcraft 3 enjoyer, Goose fan, Epoch break bar breaker. It's Sneb.
Someday. Yeah, hey guys, just join my Discord. Join every static. Kill all raid bosses. Prepare for Wing 8. Secure your team now. This is a limited time offer, okay? Also, actually, in all seriousness, I have 2 vacant spots for my team. So if you're an absolute blaster, you should DM me. There's 2 spots available. The expectation is that you will be toxic, that you will flame people. No, we just want really skilled players. We're getting ready for Wing 8, and we're going to blast like full CM raids on Wednesdays, R plus 0.5. So Wednesday evenings. It's going to be a good time.
I mean, shameless plug as well for Sneb, but I have used his Discord for raiding before, and it is good. It's solid.
You should have just said it was complete terror. You know, it made me quit. It made me uninstall.
Yeah.
It was so
That's
bad.
the reason I stopped Guild Wars. I had one bad experience. I uninstalled. Yeah.
Completely trivialized the game, made it too easy. Nothing left to complain about. Quit game.
Oh man! All right then. Okay, and of course you're here on this stream already. Maybe you're on YouTube, maybe you're on Twitch, but be sure to follow these wonderful gentlemen. The links are going to be in YouTube. They are going to be on the stream right now and below the stream all over the place. Be sure to follow the stream. Leave your comments. Definitely want to hear your opinions. Like we talked about some pretty interesting stuff today, I think. Like some topics that I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on. Let's get some good discussion going about the video game known as Guild Wars 2, soon to be known as Guild Wars 2 Janthir Wilds. And of course, you should follow me, you should follow everyone here, you should subscribe, you should hand over all your money, buy a bunch of copies of the Ultimate Edition through everyone's referral link. I'm talking 10 copies minimum. Come on, guys, let's get some swiping going. Let's support these epic creators going into the next expansion of Guild Wars 2. But that is going to about do it. I really hope you enjoyed. Again, like the video, leave us your thoughts. Take it easy, my friends. We'll see you next time. More content to come. A lot of stuff coming up, actually. There's gonna be some spice, let me tell you that, okay? Like, you know, a little tease there. But anyway, that's it. We're out of here. Take it easy, gamers. And that actually, for once, is going to be the end of the stream, as well as the end of Tea Time. Farewell, my friends. I'll see you next time.